Okay, that door is really being weird. Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Have your attention, please. All quiet, please. Thank you. Go ahead, take your notes out. We're going to be wrapping up the notes for this unit, to be followed by the review for the test, which is, how many points is the test, Jordan? 80. It's not a quiz. It's a test. Get your masks on. Get your pens or whatever your devices are totally focused. Ready to go? We got a lot of stuff going on because I'm going to be putting some stuff out to you that is on the test. And the test is going to be 80 questions, 60 of them matching, and then the remaining 20 are true-false. Okay? For those of you guys who are following and taking good notes, as you all should be, what you should have out in front of you as you're taking the notes here, focusing on the note-taking, is this last sheet. In fact, I'm going to be kind of pointing to some particular bullet points to help you, because this is the part where you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many countries in Latin America. Can't we just focus on the United States of America and forget the rest of the world? No. Yeah. Raise your hand if you have heritage that comes from some other place than that which was the original United States of America. And all hands went up, right? Raise your hands if you have some heritage that was in Europe. Ty, do you have some heritage that was in Europe? Basically, I'll ask it this way. I mean, it's kind of a simplistic way of saying this. If you are mostly white, you probably have European heritage. It's okay. You don't have to know necessarily. We're not putting you on the spot here and so forth. And sometimes it came by way of this, that, and so forth. All right. So let's get into it. Okay? We're looking at the various different parts of what will be called the Latin American countries. Okay, I have to go over here. I don't got my new clicker yet. And it all had to do with the failure of this man, or at least the exploits and the adventures of this man, the King of Spain, Ferdinand VII, who was defeated by Napoleon and put out of power, and therefore had a hard time hanging on to power. Okay? Hanging on to power and control in his Latin American provinces. We had taking up power in the Americas, Caudillos, who were from the which? Creole or Peninsulare class? Creole, very good. Who had most of the haciendas? Creoles. Who did the Peninsulares generally work for? The king. Yeah, I mean, because they were the new arrivals and so forth. And what do you call a group of Creoles who form a military committee? All together? Junta. It will be on your test. Shh. Okay? A junta. If you want to pronounce it junta while you're taking the test quietly to yourself, you just do that. I got that one right. It's junta. And I got my cadillo with my tortilla from Casadilla. Anyway, whatever. Shh. All right, now, let's get to the new stuff. Obviously, remember we covered this before, all kinds of crazy things going on in Spain. While before the king came back, you had a liberal idea that was coming out of this Cortes, this gathering at Cadiz, and they're like, hey, if we ever get the king back, he's going to be like a constitutional monarch. He's going to share power with all of us. Yeah, that didn't work out. Okay, he didn't like that idea, and he wanted to be an all-powerful monarch, although he got kicked off the throne again, and then he got put back on the throne again. But meanwhile, this is what I want to focus on. Okay? Today's focus is going to be primarily on what was going on in Latin America. All right? First, let's lay the groundwork. You really need to zoom in on this one. Let's identify. These are two continents. The colors help us. This was actually before the United States came together because it says British territory. That became the United States of America, except for Canada, which remained part of Britain. Fair enough. The light green or dark green was Spanish territory. Okay? Now, we're going to tell you generally, and sometimes the names change slightly, but generally the Spanish territory would be break out into 4 different parts. All right, let's go with the first one that's fairly simple. The Caribbean. Okay? The Caribbean. Spencer, what are the 2 main Spanish islands in the Caribbean? Very good. And the other one? No, that was French. It's actually just to the right. You were looking in the right place. If you look just to the right of the United States flag, can you read that? Or is it too small? Cuba. Yeah, Cuba. So write that down. Cuba and Puerto Rico. And we actually covered those ones very quickly last time. Spencer, what was the predominant demographic? Who were most of the people living in Puerto Rico and Cuba? I'll give you a clue. They were doing a lot of plantation, hacienda work, in tobacco, in sugarcane. Slaves, yes. So if you go to Cuba, if you go to Puerto Rico, you'll see demographically they tend to be a lot darker than you guys. Okay? They have a lot more African heritage in the mix of the population because a lot more African slaves were sold to those parts. Okay? Now, Spencer, you said Haiti. That was French. Did Haiti ever become independent? And who led the independence movement? This is recap. Who led the independence movement of Haiti? I'll give you 2 choices. Creole hacienda owners, like farm owners, or slaves. It was the slaves, okay? Which is why, make sure you have this if you know it already. Some of you guys are like, oh, this sounds familiar. The Spanish put a lot of troops in Cuba and Puerto Rico and kept a lot of troops in Cuba and Puerto Rico throughout the 1800s because they didn't want to have a slave rebellion in Cuba, Puerto Rico, like the French had in Haiti. Got that? So therefore, will Cuba and Puerto Rico be part of our independence movement that we're going to be talking about here in the 1800s? No. Every place else is going to become independent. All right? So we got the Caribbean taken care of. Okay? And then we got 3 other pieces. Something for me. Oh, grazie. That's really nice. Ooh, lovely. Thank you. Oh, reverie. All right. Good luck on Monday. Inglés. Yes, Dan's like, oh, more IB tests. It's fun to be a senior. Like, oh, gosh. Can't wait. Anyway, here we go. We're going to look at the bullet points. We got New Spain. I'm going to talk about New Spain. We're going to talk about New Granada. And then we're going to be talking about what is referred to in my handout there as New Castile and La Plata, okay, which is down here. All right? It's going to be very important for you to know. Spain ruled those areas directly with a viceroy. It's kind of like a Spanish employee who's in charge on behalf of the king of those territories. And those are huge territories. Yes, Spain ruled all of this area. All of this area. Basically, with the exception of a little bit over here, which we're not going to be talking about much in that part, what is now Guyana and so forth. We'll talk about Brazil, which is separate. That's Portuguese. Okay? But pretty much this is all Spanish. There's a little bit of British and Belize, but we're going to talk about the Spanish parts. And they're basically broken out on the continental part in 3 different parts. Very important. I got a matching section that basically is like, okay, which country was part of this? Which country was part of this? Quickly.
Yeah. Which part was New Granada?
Okay, so I'm going to go through this. You ready? The first part, New Spain. New Spain. Look at that there. And then I'm going to go ahead and identify. And you can see it because I've got it there on your notes. New Spain, you're going to see, let me flip to this slide right here. We're going to see these countries. Predominantly, Mexico is going to come from what used to be the Spanish-controlled territory of New Spain. Mexico. You will also have what is sometimes referred, well, it was at the time, United Provinces of Central America. We'll get to that. And that's going to break up And so if you're talking about the countries of Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Costa Rica. I've got them in the handout. Do you see that bullet point there? This is why you have to have the handout, because I'm like, that's very important that you need to know all those different countries. Wow, maybe I should give you a little bit of a help. Yeah, I put it right there. Do you see that? That's the New Spain part. We will tell you what happened there. Not just yet. I'm kind of like laying out the scene first. Okay, let's go back up to the map. New Granada. You ready? New Granada is going to be mostly the area of northern South America. Do you see that? Northern South America. We'll talk about Simon Bolivar and all these different battles, and we'll talk about how it played out. But if you go there today, let's go back to the new map, or newer map. What countries will you see? Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, at least the northern part of Peru. Separate countries. So you can already see one theme is going to take place here. Unlike the United States, where we had 13 that stuck together and created a country called the United States. The Spanish areas are going to break apart into separate different countries. That's going to be part of our story about how Latin America became independent. One more area. Think of it as being the southern part of South America. And that is the viceroyal territory of New Castile and La Plata. What areas? And we'll talk about Jose de San Martin. We'll talk about Bernardo O'Higgins. We'll talk about the battles there. Basically, the countries you're going to get there: Argentina, Chile, which is along the coast, okay? Grazie. Uruguay, Paraguay, Samaguay, and just kidding, Bolivia. Those are going to be separate countries that will originally be part of that Spanish territory. Does that make sense? Okay? Yeah. It's like Christmas. Teacher appreciation. Lovely. Okay? And then Brazil. That's easy. One country, one ruler, Portugal. Yes, go ahead.
Is the reason it's called New Castile was because it was before the Iberian wedding? Or
Yeah, it's kind of like where the names, Granada was a city, a region in southern Spain.
Okay.
Castile is sort of like the central area and so forth. I'm not going to get into all the details, but they all reflect back on Spanish names.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. You guys ready to rock and roll? Yes?
Okay, so basically you're saying that New Spain includes Mexico and like all the stuff on the...
Yeah, it's kind of like right in here, Central America. Sometimes the gradients, they'll move a boundary, this, that, and so forth. The biggest chunk of New Spain is going to be the country of Mexico. We're going to talk mostly about... In fact, let's start. You ready? Let's tell the story about how what used to be called New Spain became independent. Are you ready? All right. Mexico, Central America. The year is 1810. The year is 1810. Think. Who is on the throne in Spain, 1810? Napoleon's family. Okay? You've got Creoles in New Spain, and they are looking at becoming independent. You ready? They want to become independent. They're like, let's become independent. Haiti's independent. The United States is independent. Our king is, who knows where our king is, good grief. And we don't want to be ruled by the French. So let's be independent. The Creoles were looking around going, hey, Peninsulares, you guys who used to be following orders from the king, we don't necessarily want to follow orders from you. We're going to go ahead and make this, forget this mask of thing. Let's just go ahead and make this a fight for full-blown independence. You ready? Here's the name of one of the key early leaders, Father Miguel Hidalgo. You see his name up there? I'm going to tell you the story about Father Miguel Hidalgo. Father, what do you suppose? Anybody have any idea? What do you suppose his position was? Yes, go for it. He's a priest, yeah. Wow, that's a pretty active role for a priest to play. He's going to be like leading a revolution? Really? Yeah, sometimes you have that. I mean, can you tell me the name of like one of the leading civil rights leaders in the 1960s in the United States of America? I have a dream that my students know this information. Martin Luther King Jr., yeah, he's a civil rights leader. He's also a religious figure. Yeah, he was a reverend, yeah. Okay, he started out as a pastor in a Protestant church. Father Miguel Hidalgo, oh, by the way, all these different areas we're talking about, what religion? They all said together, Catholic, very good, okay? So Father Miguel Hidalgo is going to lead a revolution against whoever is in charge in Spain, the Peninsulares, and so forth. Now it's going to get complicated. Always gets complicated. This is what you need to know about Father Miguel Hidalgo. He had a real heart for poor people, the poorest people in that region. And the other Creoles identified this fairly early on. If you're a Creole, you got a hacienda, you got land. I mean, the poor people work for you. In fact, I'm going to make sure you get this name. You ready? Peones. Sometimes people call them peons. P-E-O-N, a peon. If you do it plural, it's P-E-O-N-E-S. Those are the poor farm workers. Okay? What do you think, Keith? What do you suppose would be the predominant like racial composition of these people? Are they going to be 100% European? No. So they're not Peninsulari at all. What about like mostly European, like the Creoles? No. So what are they going to be mostly? They're going to be a mixture of native, or what do you call it when it's a mixture of native and some European? Starts with an M. Mestizo, yes, mestizo. That's going to be on the test, mestizo. So if you look at the population who are sort of like the most underserved and economically disadvantaged, Hidalgo, he's got a heart for those guys. In fact, bless you, as he leads this revolution, and he needs them. I mean, think to the American Revolution. For the American Revolution to succeed, did they need lots of poor guys to help participate? Heck yeah. I mean, those are some of the guys that are right out there doing all the fighting and so forth. Thank you, George Washington, for leading it and all, but, you know, there was a bunch of common men out there fighting too. And so Hidalgo knows he needs those guys. What do you suppose? Tell me, Bobby, if Hidalgo comes to these poor men and says, fight for me, fight for a free country, maybe he'll call it Mexico, what do you suppose he could offer them that they might go, yeah, I could fight for that? Oh, I like the second one. Land, you know, money you can spend it, it's gone. But land, if you own it, you keep it. Write that down. There was a feeling, a promise, a sense that if Hidalgo won and he's in charge of the new government, boom, land reform. Remember we saw that in Spain too well. Did the king like the idea of land reform, like breaking up all the haciendas and plantations and giving the land to all the poor people? King didn't like it, landowner didn't like it. Well, guess what? Write this down. The other Creoles with Hidalgo, they don't like it either. And they turn on him. They don't want that kind of rebellion. They don't want that kind of outcome. They just want to be in charge of their territory. So what happens to Father Hidalgo? And here's the deal. He gets like 90,000 of these poor men to come join his effort. But he ends up dead, ultimately. Yeah. It's sort of a betrayal by the Creoles. Okay? He's executed by the troops loyal to the Spanish. And get this. You got that? You understand why he was killed? Or at least why he wasn't supported by the rest of the Creoles? Because what do the Creoles want? They want to keep the land. And they want a country, and they want to be in charge of that new country. Yeah, exactly. So here's the deal. 1820, write this down, 1820. So we got the whole thing started in 1810, and by 1811, Hidalgo was killed. Wow, that didn't take long. But by 1820, the Creoles are like, let's do this again. Who are they going to need the support of? The poor mestizos. They go to the poor mestizos. And this time they're going to be led by another Creole. You can call him a Cadillo because he's got a horse and he's got a uniform. Okay? His name is Agustin de Iturbide. Okay? He is going to be the leader of the Mexican Revolution movement that's going to be kicking it into high gear in 1820. So this is like 9 years after Hidalgo is dead. And he will go to the mestizos and he will say to the mestizos, I want you to fight. Just like you fought for Hidalgo, I want you to fight for me. And they're going, well, what are we going to get out of it? Mexican independence. Okay, you guys, are you excited about that? Mexican independence? What else do you want? He's like, land. What would you say if Iturbide convinced you that you would get land as a result of beating the Spanish and creating an independent Mexico?
I wouldn't be sure about that.
Really? Why not? Are you cynical?
Well, no, I think that if he promises land, I don't like the look of his eyes. I think he might double back on that.
You think he might double back on that?
Yeah, like he gets independence.
Are you saying that people make promises at times in history and they don't necessarily follow through?
That doesn't seem likely, but
Are you saying that you're just going to take the blood and sweat and fighting spirit of all these poor people and win a victory and then turn their back on them? Yeah, go ahead, write that down. Okay? Because that's what happens. Okay? Iturbide is not Hidalgo. Hidalgo very well may have tried to hand the land over to the people. Iturbide takes them 1 year. They win. Oh, by the way, where's the king in 1820, 1821? Yeah, he's hiding again. Yeah, he's waiting for the French to return him to power. I'm just like, where's Fernando? Where is he? Well, he's nowhere. He's in no position to hang on to Mexico. So there we go. Iturbide wins. 1821. Mexico is independent. Got it? And who is the leader of Mexico? That's easy. This guy. Well, what is his position? What kind of leadership thing does he set up? Is he going to set up like a monarchy? Or is he going to set up a democracy, a republic? And if he sets up a republic, is it going to be like a truly like representative republic like they got in the United States? Or is it going to be dominated by one particular group?
maybe it's a republic, but I think he's going to like dictate a lot of the decisions, and he's going to like dictate it on his own.
As we go through this, I'll give you a little bit of a heads up. Not too many surprises here. When we see an emperor or a king, they'll rule like an emperor or king. When we see a president, they're going to rule like an emperor or king. We're going to see a lot of these kind of all-powerful, autocratic dictator-type people. Iturbide, write it down. He's an emperor. That's what he calls himself. Until he's removed from power in 1823. There's going to be a theme here. A lot of these guys who bring their country into independence, it's not going to go quietly into retirement like George Washington. A lot of them are going to get bounced on their ear. They're going to get kicked out. Sometimes because they're going too fast. So he's only going to be, emperor for like about 2-3 years? Oh, by the way, does he fulfill his promises? Nope. Nope. I mean, are they ever going to, in Mexico, actually, redistribute a bunch of the land to the poor people? I would say you'll have to wait until about the 1930s before that's going to take place. And it will be a Mexican revolutionary period. That's something that's covered much later. That's over 100 years. There'll be a revolutionary spirit because the poor people are looking around going, hey, we won, but we got nothing. Yeah, it's right over here. Be careful as you walk over there. If you can move the bag there so that nobody trips, because sometimes people trip on this cord and so forth. It's right on my desk. Okay, nope, no worries. Okay, so meanwhile, I'll just hold it there. Whoops. Meanwhile, let's go back to this one. Meanwhile, Central America, those areas that are sort of just south of Mexico today, what we know today as Nicaragua, Guatemala, Honduras, Costa Rica, and El Salvador, the 5 main Central American countries, they were briefly part of Mexico. You can write that down. kind of just sort of south of Mexico. Okay? You got that? They were briefly part of Mexico, but you know what? They didn't really want to be part of Mexico. So they left. And they created initially what is called, and I like this map because it has the name of it, 1823. They set it up. It's called the United Provinces of Central America. Ooh, I wonder how united they are. We know there's 5 of them. How long will they be united as one country? Answer, 15 years. By 1838, there you go, this will go really quick. By 1838, poof, they break up into 5 different separate countries, which are, and you've got the bullet point in your notes, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Honduras, Costa Rica, and El Salvador. And that's all she said about that. Those guys are going to have their own independent countries. It's interesting because today on the border of the United States of America, where you got people coming from the south trying to make their way into the United States of America for opportunities, etc., very interesting, controversial issue. Where are many of them coming from? Those Central American countries going through Mexico on the way to the United States. Okay?
The United Provinces all the boss stays like together for like 13 years or so?
15 years, that's it. Yeah. And then they break up into separate parts. Do you see a theme going on here already? You got something that's kind of big, and then sometimes they break up. They're like, oh, well, we're together for convenience because we don't want to be part of Mexico, but frankly, I don't want to be part of you guys anyway. Okay, fine. Be 5 separate countries. Right? Meanwhile, in Mexico, let's talk about a new leader. Santa Anna. Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. Santa Anna is the one who overthrows Iturbide. So he's like, Santa Anna says, look, does he look like a cadillo? That guy looks like a cadillo. Right? A Creole on a horse with a uniform. Okay? He defeats the forces of Iturbide. He's like, we don't want no empire. We want a republic. So he is going to be a powerful leader in the republic. Guess what position he's going to have? President. I don't know. He's president. Okay? He's going to be the president. Okay? And to not spend too much time on Mexico, but in its early history, they're going to go back and forth, sometimes between a monarchy, sometimes between a president. But let's just make sure this is clear. If you got a monarch or you got a president in Mexico, which class do they come from? The poor classes? No, the Creoles, exactly. Very good. And do they run, are they more sort of dictatorial, or are they more sort of like open up to everyone having, equal opportunity and equal position in, as far as like voting and so forth? Not so much, okay? Who is going to be in the best position? The Creoles, who own the haciendas. They're going to be in the strongest position. Oh, and put this in there as well. They're also going to work very closely with the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church is going to maintain a very important position in all of these countries. Okay? All right? We'll come back to Santa Anna later on because he's going to be the guy in Mexico when a problem breaks out in one of the territories. In 1836, a territory in the northern part of Mexico called Tejas. Tejas. They're going to try to break away from Mexico. They got a lot of people that came across the border, some with permission, some without, but whatever, came across the border from the United States of America, and they're settling in Tejas, and they're like, we want to declare ourselves independence. And they will win, ultimately. And then they will ultimately join our country. What country are we? What territory are we talking about? Tejas is Texas. Exactly. Yeah. So our next unit, we'll talk a little bit about how Tejas became Texas, and Santa Anna tried. He crushed all of the Texans at the Battle of Alamo, but then ultimately was defeated. Anyway, that's coming up later. That's a little bit later on there. Are we ready to go to the next territory? Okay, New Granada. You guys know where we're talking about New Granada? South America, North America. South America. What part of South America? Northern South America or Southern South America? Northern South America. Very good. All right. It all started in 1810, so about the same time we have things bubbling up in Mexico. And we're going to have a leader here, Simón Bolívar. Talk a lot about Simón Bolívar. Well, I don't know. What do you think? Mestizo? Peninsulare? Creole? Ding, ding, ding. He's a Creole. Does he have a hacienda? Yes. Does he have a uniform? Does he have a horse? What does that make him? Caudillo. From Amarillo, he's a caudillo. And he's an independence fighter, okay? He's a wealthy Creole and caudillo, and he is going to fight for many years against the Spanish forces. And ultimately, he is going to be victorious, okay? And we've got some key battles there. If you look at the bullet points there, do you see Simón Bolívar? We got two key battles that are listed in your bullet points there. The battles of Boyacá in the Colombia region and Carabobo in the Venezuelan region. Do you see those there? 1819, Battle of Boyacá in modern-day Colombia. Boom! Simón Bolívar beats the Spanish royalists. Within 2 years later, the Battle of Carabobo. Boom! In what is now modern Venezuela, he beats the Spanish royalists. And so therefore, write it down, 1821, boom! The Spanish royalists are defeated. They're like, where was their king during this time? Oh yeah, he'd been overthrown in Spain again. So 1821, way to go, Simón Bolívar. You got that? So, I mean, if you were like living in that part of the world and so forth, those would be battles that would be very important to you, like Yorktown and Saratoga and so forth. Boyacá and Carabobo. Got that? One or both of them might show up on the matching section. Simón Bolívar won them both. Well done. He's like, in a sense, the George Washington of that particular region. So is he going to be able to have the same kind of success? Did Iturbide have that same success as George Washington? Was he able to hold on to power as long as he wanted? Or did he get bounced? Iturbide got bounced. What about Bolivar? Let's see what happens to Bolivar. Okay, let's see. Yeah. Bolivar decides that he wants to have created, write it down, Gran Colombia. Sounds like Grand Colombia, basically is. And you can see it right here. Green, orange, purple. All of that as one big country. Got it? Now, there's going to be a bit of a challenge here, and ultimately, spoilers, it's going to break apart. The green will ultimately become Venezuela. The orange will ultimately become Colombia, although this part, this isthmus, you guys know what an isthmus is? Okay, that's what a lisper gets from Christmas. The isthmus, right, is a little like narrow land thing. It's called Panama. That story will come later on as far as how that became Panama as an independent country. It used to be part of Colombia. Right here, the purple is Ecuador. Bolivar will try, but sorry, it's going to fall apart. Well, what happens, Bolivar? What happens? He declares himself, and he has a lot of support because he's this military victor and so forth. He wants to be a president. There we go. He's a president. Very good. He's a president of Gran Colombia. So he's got a republic. He doesn't need to be a king. He doesn't need to be an emperor. He's an elected president. But we see a problem. He's a president of a country, and he believes that the best way for that big country to be run is for a lot of power in the central government. You're like, what? Well, of course there's a lot of power in the central government. What other way would there be? Let me ask you guys, when you were at the Second Continental Congress, did you want to create some big, strong, powerful United States government, or did you just want to beat the British and move on from there? Exactly, beat the British and move on from there. That is called, make sure you write this term down, it's called federalism. The idea that each separate component part, let's go back to this slide here, each separate part wants to have more control over what's going on is federalism. So the folks living down here, what would be Ecuador, they're like, hey, Bolivar, you don't need to be so bossy and have your all-powerful central government. Same thing from many of the people in other parts of Gran Colombia. Do you understand that? Yes?
What kind of power and centralization are we talking about?
Basically, think of this. I'll try to make it as clear to you guys as possible. The capital city should be the center of the all-powerful government, as in the decisions are made in the capital city. For you guys, do you want all the key decisions in the United States of America to be made in Washington, D.C.? Or would you like at least some of those decisions to be made in the various different state capitals? We have an interesting mixture of that in our country, okay? And that was part of the conflict. Bolivar was like, I'm the president of this national government, this central government. Let's get things done that way. And he had some fights. So almost as soon as they kicked the Spanish government out, and they have a brand new country there, he's fighting. And he comes up with an interesting idea. He says, write this down, that he should be the lifetime president. Oh my God. Is that a George Washington kind of idea?
So that's a Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, that's like a Vladimir Putin. That's like a Julius Caesar. That's like what a dictator does. Bolivar says, I should be the lifetime president. Okay? And he gets a lot of opposition in his country. A lot of opposition. And so he's like, well, if I want to be the lifetime president, but if you're not okay with that, how about we just take it one step higher? Write it down. 1828, 7 years after the creation of this new country, he declares himself the absolute dictator. Yeah. Yeah, so in 1828, he declares himself the dictator. Because there's all kinds of people that are running around and they don't agree with him and they're causing all kinds of problems. And he just needs to take charge. He's going to crack down on these guys. I'm going to be the president. You call me dictator. I'm here forever.
But it's still Grand Columbia.
Yeah. He wants to keep it all together as Gran Colombia. Will he succeed? I think you can sort of see where this is going. He's going to fail. He ultimately is defeated by, let's see, 1831. 1831, it's all over. Okay? He says, America is ungovernable. Yeah, maybe the way you want to govern. And he dies, actually, at the same time of tuberculosis at age 47. Goodbye, Bolivar. Okay? He helped his country become independent, and ultimately, was he really popular at the very end of his rule? No, not in his own country. And here's the kicker. It broke apart right thereafter. What did it break apart into? Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador. Good. Too bad. Too bad, Simon Bolivar. Although he actually comes out a little bit better maybe than some of the others in the long, long scheme of things. Okay? Any questions about how things kind of played out in that northern part of South America? All right, let's go to the southern part of South America. This would be that province of New Castile and La Plata. All right? There we're going to have two key leaders. Two key Creoles. Oh my gosh, what do you think? Do they got haciendas? Of course they do. Do they got a nice military uniform? Of course they do. What do we call these guys? Caudillos. What's that? I don't know. He's got his flag. I don't know. Yeah, I know. The horse is resting right now. I don't know. Anyway, José de San Martín. Put this down. He is going to be most active. I can refer to this map, right? You can see this very well. He's going to be most active in the fights going on, like in Argentina, what it will become Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, Bolivia. And the next guy, Bernardo O'Higgins, he's going to be most involved in the fights going on in Chile. Somebody who knows a little bit about geography. What is going on what is this Chile thing? I mean, talk about a weird, interesting looking country. It's like elongated. I mean, what is separating like Chile from Argentina? high, high mountains, the Andes Mountains. They're like among the highest in the world. And so they form the border between what will become Chile and Argentina. So it's no easy feat to just kind of go back and forth and back and forth. No, you don't do that. There are some passes, but it's kind of like you got two sort of separate parts already in this massive territory. By the way, Bernardo O'Higgins, give it a shot. Raise your hand. I need a volunteer. What do you think? Is that a Latin? Is that a Spanish name? Bernardo is. O'Higgins? O'Higgins? What does that sound like? English? French? I think Irish. Yeah, I think Irish, yeah. Irish. Anyway, so yeah, he's got the great mutton chops and so forth, the sideburns, and the uniform. Who knows where the horse is? Okay, so these two are going to be the leaders of the fight for independence, okay, against the Spanish. There we go. And they tried to establish a new country right here, the blue, which you can see is pretty much all of that southern part of South America. If you go further over this way, you're running into Brazil, which is Portuguese. Okay, you go further north, you're into the hot mess that will ultimately become Gran Colombia, and then will break apart. So here we go. They try to create this new country called the United Provinces of the Rio de la Plata. Rio as in, you guys know what Rio is, come on. A river, right? So we got this river kind of coming out here by what is ultimately Uruguay. And it's the do you guys remember The Mission, that horrible movie I made you watch that was really depressing and so forth? Okay, that was part of the Rio de la Plata drainage system. The falls went into it, and then they eventually came out here in the Atlantic Ocean. All right, so that's what their goal is. Write it down. They declare themselves independent in 1816. Okay? And, of course, they're going to be having fights with the forces loyal to the king. Okay? They're going to have fights against the forces loyal to the king, and we'll go through 3 of those fights. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those other than to give you the date. And I think, actually, did I give you the date on these ones? Yeah, you can see these ones. The battle is Chacabuco, Mayupu, and Ayacucho. Ayacucho. Okay? Do you see that? Those are in the third to last bullet point in the handout. Okay? Key battles. Here's what's in common. Spain loses all of them. Here's what's unique. The Battle of Chacabuco is in Chile. This is in 1817. The Battle of Chacabuco is in Chile. Who was the leader of the military fighting in the Chilean region? Bernardo O'Higgins. And put this down. Here's a favor for you. Guess who comes over through a pass, through the Andes to help him out? Correct, Jose de San Martin. All right, so they're working together against the Spanish, and they win. Well done. So what does Bernardo O'Higgins do after that? Oh, there's another battle. 1818, the Battle of Mayupu. Okay, the Battle of Mayupu, same location in the sense that it's in Chile. Got it? So who's going to be the leader of the fight in Chile? Good. Who's he going to get some help from? Who's the other guy? You got it right there. Who's the other guy? You got O'Higgins, and who's the other guy? This one. Jose de San Martin, right? So he's coming over to help out O'Higgins, right? Do they win? I told you they win all of them. Okay, so they win. So in 1818, they beat the Spanish again. And here's how Bernardo O'Higgins shows his appreciation of San Martin. Thank you, San Martin. Now he declares an independent country of Chile. Write that down. So their initial goal of creating this united thing, after they defeat the Spanish forces in what is now Chile, Bernardo O'Higgins is like, I'm good. I'll take over this elongated new country called Chile along the border of the the Pacific Ocean. You guys still following? Chacabuco, 1817. Mayupu, 1818. And then when does Chile declare, hey, we're good, we're separate? 1818. And Jose de San Martin's like, I came all the way over here to help you defeat the Spanish so you could like break apart and create a separate country. And O'Higgins is like, yep. You okay with that? Yeah, I mean, that happens. So what's actually, let me just focus on O'Higgins. Will he have the great success story, like George Washington, of leading his people to military success and then ruling happily? You're not convinced? Well, I'll tell you what. He will rule until he's overthrown in 1823. That's like 5 years. Yeah. You got it? Let me see. Didn't work out for Iturbide, didn't work out for Bolivar, didn't work out for O'Higgins. Okay, well, let's see how things work out for Jose de San Martin. Jose de San Martin, of course, is still fighting over here on the eastern side of the Andes Mountains. He's got plenty of Spanish forces over there, and he's fighting, here's the year. You want to know the year? 1824, the Battle of Ayacucho in the Peruvian region. He's fighting the Spanish forces, and he's like, I need some help. I think O'Higgins is busy, actually he'd already been overthrown by 1824, so O'Higgins is out of the scene. But guess who shows up? We've forgotten about this guy, and he's actually not doing too bad in 1824. Was he doing too bad in 1824? He comes down with some military. Things aren't going great, but, they'll get worse. He comes down from the north to bring his army to help Jose de San Martin to beat the Spanish forces. Who is this guy from the north? Simon says, I will help you. Simon says, I will help you. There we go. Write it down. Simon Bolivar comes from the north to help Jose de San Martin to win the Battle of Ayacucho in Peru, the last battle of the Latin American Wars of Independence. Spain is done. Now here's Jose de San Martin. He's wondering, am I going to be able to rule this country? What do you think? Is he going to be able to rule this country, this United Provinces of the Rio de la Plata, except for Chile, which has already left? No, he doesn't. In fact, he looks at it and he's like, I'm not even going to try. His wife had died in 1824, and he looks around and he's like, I beat the Spanish. My wife's dead. I don't want to be a dictator because I have a feeling if I'm a dictator, everyone's going to hate me, so I might as well leave on a good note. Woohoo, I beat the Spanish. And he went to Europe. He went to France. Jose de San Martin. The man who brought independence to southern South America. He got on a boat and he went to France. To get a wife?
Why else did he go?
I don't know. I actually don't know all the details about what happened to him when he got to France. Did he speak French? Where did he stay in France? Did he stay in Paris? Did he get involved in this, that, and so forth? Did he run into, like Fernando and so forth? I think it kind of just sort of like, he sort of just like, Washington maybe his happiest days were like when he was on the farm. But, when Washington went to the farm, they kept bugging him like, hey, Washington, come on over here, be a president. Hey, Washington, do this. Hey, Washington. He just got on a boat and went to France. And that was it. Got it? Jose de San Martin. He got on a boat and he went to France. And what happened to his country? It broke up. Duh, it broke up. Is there a country called the Rio de la Plata? No. What do you end up getting? Let's see. Actually, let's just go to our map right here. Okay? You get Argentina. Okay? So we got Argentina there. We got Uruguay. We got Paraguay. Oh! And then the upper part, 1825, what is sometimes referred to as the upper part of Peru because it's upper as opposed to the lower part of Peru. If you go to Peru today, don't go walk around and go, hey, are you from lower Peru? Because they look at you like, Yankee, But upper, it means what? Higher up. So when upper Peru declares itself independent, is that a good name, Upper Peru? Upper Peru, is that a stupid name? Yeah. It's kind of a stupid name. They need a new name. They need a cool name. They need like a fighting name. You need a name that's going to stick with them. So what are they going to call themselves? Bolivia. Oh. Where did they come up with that name? No, you wonder, but tell me. That guy. Simon Bolivar? Why don't they call it Bolivaria? I don't know, Bolivia. It's named after Simon Bolivar, and that was 1825, so he's all cool with that and everything, so that works out really well. Way to go, Simon Bolivar. Okay? You got a country named after you. You know, that's more than George Washington got, right? Did he ever get like a part of, like an entire country named after him? Did he get anything named after him? What? A state? A monument? 2 states? Really? The other, that's a city. Anyway, Washington, District of Columbia, it's a federal territory. It's okay. There's people who are like, it should be a state, you know. Did they get a county? Any counties? Is there a county in Idaho? Yeah, we said that's right, Washington County. All right, very good. Yeah, they got all kinds of things. All right, next. Here we go. Brazil. Let's go quickly on Brazil. You ready? Brazil. You ready? Okay. All right. Are your hands sore? I guess. You guys, oh my gosh. Are you learning stuff? Like, you got any themes here? You're like, wow, it's great to be a dictator or an independence movement leader in Latin America. Let's check this one out. The Brazil story is quite different. And it's kind of weird. Brazil, first of all, was controlled by what European country? Not Spain. Everyone said together, Portugal. Very good. Now, here's what you need to know. You know how Napoleon was messing with Spain and kicking them out and chasing them out and so forth and so on? They did the same to Portugal. The king of Portugal actually fled Portugal and went to Brazil. Write it down. They're like, I'm going to across the Atlantic Ocean. I'm going to go to the Portuguese territory of Brazil, and I'm going to hang out in Brazil until it's safe to go back home. You tell me, when is it safe to go back to Portugal so that Napoleon is never going to mess with you ever again? When do you find, was it safe to go back to Europe after Napoleon was stuck on an island the first time? Because what did he do? He came back and raised an army and then Waterloo and so forth. Check your notes, somebody give me a date. When is Napoleon defeated at Waterloo and packed up on a ship and sent to the southern Atlantic Ocean to the British naval outpost of St. Helena?
I believe May of 1815.
Whoa, May of 1815, all right? Fair enough, all right? Fair enough. No, that's good. Okay, so 1815. So is it safe for the Portuguese king to go back to Portugal by 1815? The Portuguese are like, king, get back here. So write this down. The Portuguese are looking around like, king, you know, I know you're like chilling out in Brazil and it's all cool and everything there and so forth, but you need to like come back to Portugal. And eventually, write this down, the king will go back to Portugal in 1821. I mean, it's like he waits 6 years. It's like, dude, what are you afraid of? Why are you coming back? Well, here's the deal. You know how all these other Latin American independence movements are kicking around, going all over the place and so forth, and like Spain is losing everything? Well, write this down. There's an independence fever that is picking up among the Brazilian population. They're looking around and they're going, hey, all these Spanish-speaking areas are becoming independent. We should be independent too. Well, what's the king going to do about it? The king has a plan. Have you heard this expression? If you can't beat them, join them. Or even better, lead them. Write that down. Here's a corollary to if you can't beat them, join them. Write it down. If you can't beat them, lead them. This is interesting. The king looks and he's like, am I cool with Brazil becoming an independent nation? Maybe if this guy's in charge of Brazil. Well, who's this guy? It's his son. That's Prince Dom Pedro, I will tell you. Prince Dom Pedro. In 1822, like within a year after Papa goes back to Portugal, he leads the Brazilian independence revolution. The prince. Yeah. Who is he? Vote for Pedro. That's not a vote. Yeah, he's the son of the king. Yeah. So it's like, here's the deal. And there actually was a battle. Not a huge, massive, blood-churling battle, but there was a battle. And it was kind of a pretense, really. I'd hate to be the person that died in a battle for independence because they already knew how it was going to work out. They already knew how it was going to work out. How was it going to work out? He was going to win. See, the king was sort of like not on their side, so that the people who wanted independence would be convinced that, whoa, this is really like an independence movement. So, you can be like, in 1822, it didn't take us long. Woohoo, we're Brazil. We got our independence. How's that? You say that to all the Spanish-speaking people in Central and South America, and they all look it over and you go, you poser. You're not really an independence movement. You just like had a little fight that was really fake with Daddy, and he basically handed the country over to you. You got that? So let me ask you this. Did things really change in Brazil after Brazil became independent? Heck no. Write that down. That's the key thing. And that was the reason why they did it. And that was the reason why a lot of the wealthy landowners in Brazil looked and said, I can see independence is coming. Let's go ahead and do it. Let's make it look like it's like a regular independence sort of fight thing and so forth. And then we'll call it over, and then we'll move on from there. You got that? So he will become the ruler. And they'll set up a constitutional monarchy. So you'll have like the landowners, the Creoles and so forth, Portuguese-speaking Creoles, working with this new emperor, the Brazilian emperor, and everything's going to work out interestingly. Here is a message of like how little things change. You ready? You want to point this out? Make sure you write this down. The Brazilian economy, like the gold mining economy, the sugar plantation economy, relied heavily on slavery. Heavily on slavery. Okay? Do you think the landowners wanted to keep slavery around? Mm-hmm. And to the extent that they were like part of running the country, they were like the last country in the world to get rid of slavery. 1888. The United States didn't get rid of it until 1865 after a bloody civil war, but Brazil, kept it around until 1888. So not that much changed in Brazil. Okay? Way to go, Dom Pedro. I guess. I don't know, depending on how you look at it. You're like, hey, I'm working in the sugar plantation. Hey, did you see that we were an independent country now? Yeah, we're Brazil. Wow, has anything changed? No. No. I mean, nothing really changed. Yeah, 1888 was the last year of slavery there. All right, now, shift. This is the very, very last part of the very, very last page. The United States position toward Latin American independence, Monroe Doctrine, James Monroe, John Quincy Adams, British Navy. Here we go. This is the last notes, and then we're going to get to the review for the test, okay? All right, I'm going to go through this fairly quickly with you. The United States of America, little United States of America. This is going to be during the presidency of number 5 here, James Monroe. We're still a small country, and as these Latin American wars of independence are going on, our position is, woohoo, we favor it. Write it down. We favor it. Okay? We favor it. And so we made it official government policy. It's called the Monroe Doctrine. The official date, December 2nd, 1823. So this is during the presidency of James Monroe. Okay? Okay, 1823, December 2nd, 1823. And it's called the Monroe Doctrine. Okay? And basically, this is a message to Europe. Hey, all these Latin American countries are becoming independent. You stay over there and don't mess with my new independent brothers over here in the Americas. You got that? It was kind of a threat. As in like, oh, well, if Spain can't hold on to them, maybe France will come in or some other country will come. France actually tried in Mexico.